Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the beer-evangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State podcast. It's episode 15 of season 2. We've got our special guest this week is Wes O'Leary from Oddside Ales up in Grand Haven. Welcome, Scott. How are things in your world?
Well, Fred, I'd say they're pretty good. I'm, kind of starting to look toward the end of 2021. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty, but I have some optimism. As we start to plan for 2022, we did have 2 fall festivals that were very successful. We're planning an in-person conference I'm really excited about for January at the Grand Traverse Resort. And it's kind of giving me some fresh energy. I'm working on some plans for the Guild and budgets and things like that for 2022. And, I've got a lot more optimism now than I might have anticipated or worried about 6 months ago. So, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, it's nice to have some festivals in our view and in our experience, and to be able to imagine that for next year. It brings a lot forward. I think that goes for all of I'm sure our members are all feeling the same way. I think it's still going to be a little bit of a tricky winter, but we've made it through something that was outlandishly surreal, and we're starting to see opportunities come together and have pints of beer together again, without some of those surreal hurdles that we went through in the last couple of years. So it's exciting.
Yeah, like you said, I think we've got a long way to go to really be in the clear, and I feel like there are a lot of unknowns for 2022, and the potential for it to regress and not be great. But I'm just going to take that if it comes at us and hope that it doesn't.
Yeah, and if nothing else, I think we all have a whole new skill set, really, in terms of if that happens. We've been through it before. We know how to navigate some of those things. We know how to go into that mode. Certain things don't happen. That's a different thing. But I think that overall, there's been this adaptation. So we'll find our way through. There's a little more confidence in it all. So we've also got the conference coming up in January. So for the brewery members, any thoughts on what we should be sharing about the conference, in terms of content, in terms of dates and engagement, and what should people know about the 2022 Michigan Great Beer State Conference?
Well, I think the key thing is we'll have registration open soon and much more detail very soon. In fact, by the time people are hearing this, that will already be old news, and we'll be promoting the schedule. And but I think the keynotes are that we're looking at January 12th through the 14th. And I'm really excited about the expanded format, adding to what has always been really good content, but to take this collaboration of District Michigan Master Brewers Association and what they bring to the table as far as resources to attract great speakers and to think through that and plan it. You add that to the sort of business content that I guess the Brewers Guild brings to the table, and then to expand on that with an agricultural focus, and the folks at MSU Extension and their involvement and the expanded collaboration to sort of, I guess it it's absorbed the Great Lakes Hop and Barley Conference, which has been a great program for 6 or 7 years. So it just makes it bigger and stronger. It brings our community, it's bringing more people more closely into the community, I think, by embracing the agriculture side. And I think that that's really important to the success of seeing barley and malt and hops continue to be a growing industry in Michigan, so that those things, hopefully can become, old, big, stable industries that are part of a local supply chain and part of what makes Michigan, the great beer state, as we call it.
Yeah, and I think that many members, participants always talk about the between things moment, the connective tissue of being at a conference is more than the seminars, because it's who you meet, who you get to have beers with, who you get to meet at the dinner or in the hallway between classes, or go up and talk to a speaker. And I think when you talk about adding the agricultural component, I just want to express that we're not just talking about some hop speakers for brewers. We're talking about the conference that is also for the growers and for the maltsters and for the industry members of, excuse me, the industry members that are bringing those ingredients from around the Great Lakes and especially Michigan to brewers. So by having that industry in the room, I think our community grows and gets larger and more knowledgeable of each other. So I just thought I'd bring that up, that it's changing our whole sort of universe and bringing more people in.
And I would add that I really get a great deal of inspiration from being around people who are producing very high quality hops and malt, because they're doing what Michigan breweries were doing 20 and 25 and 30 years ago, which is to bring these products to market for a new reason, these old products to market for a new reason, that reason being flavor, not just base alcohol content, but flavor, not just a little bitterness, but a lot of hop character and bitterness. And it's inspiring to see these people taking the plunge and flying in the face of conventional wisdom and establishing these businesses that the traditional industry looks at and says, that doesn't make any sense, and you don't do that. So to me, it's really inspirational and is another wave of what's been, of what we've been a part of for so long.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm really looking forward to that. So listeners, brewery members, everybody that's interested, check it out. When throughout all these interviews, when you talk to people that are that have been going to our conference for a long time, you hear the advocacy and you hear how much this has meant to so many people. So it's something that we're both proud of, but more importantly, I think I'm always excited to see our community get inspired and connected at the conference. There's nothing quite like it. So
Yeah,
that's our pitch. Go check it out. Registration will be open soon, January, in Traverse City this year. So I think with that,
I'll throw out mibeer.com. That's the website with the information and registration, mibeer.com.
Right on. And so we're skipping the Brewers Dozen this week. We've been through the circuit twice, and we're preparing a new path through the membership roles to pick up Brewers Dozen soon. So we'll jump right into our guest star for the day, which is Wes O'Leary, who's with Oddside Ales in Grand Haven. And close to my heart, Wes comes at this from a distribution, sales and distribution and branding point of view. And I think that's a great perspective to hear from. And I liked hearing about his history and kind of how he ended up at Oddside and how he ended up at a brewery in general. What are your thoughts?
At the risk of sounding like a crusty old dude, I really think it's great that we've got Wes, who is a younger man coming in with his own inspiration. The industry needs to keep appealing to fresh, younger folks. It can't just be something that gets old with one generation or one community. It needs to be vibrant. and relevant to people of different age groups and categories. And so for me, it's really great to see, you know, another kind of age group grow up. And he even referenced himself feeling like the old veteran with part of his crew on a trip.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, that's really good. I'm excited to see
Yeah.
that, and to see, you know, more people get engaged and earn a living and be part of the community and the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he, you know, does a great job of describing the Oddside story as well, which is there's all this continuing sort of growth, which isn't just volume, but growth in terms of growing up and a brand becoming an identity, you know, that's a living, breathing thing, and changing shape as the times go on. So I think that's it's pretty cool to hear from him and from a different vantage point, and that's what it's all about, really. And
Yeah. One other thing I would point out, and this goes, I'm sure this goes back as into the history, as far as there have been commercial breweries of much size at all. You know, there's always this dynamic between the sales force and the production end, and it's much easier for folks in production to be fraternal and share and talk about what they're doing because they make beer. Well, the sales end of things has to sometimes like go toe to toe and feel competitive, if not be very competitive. We certainly see that in the macro part of our industry, and it's not that we don't see it in the micro or local part of our industry, but there's still much more of a brotherhood and camaraderie. But for anybody that maybe hasn't considered that really is just passionate about beer, the dynamic of making beer and getting beer to market, at least through the retail channels, is one that's important. It entails a lot of work. It's behind the scenes work. It looks glamorous, but it's, you know, it's kind of nose to the grindstone. To be successful, you got to keep working hard and have a lot of perseverance and patience. So that's an interesting part of this story.
yeah, and it can be a little trickier to get that comrade, to find to resource yourself with mentors and camaraderie, because people doing your job are out there, you know, calling on the same buyers, and it has that literal competitiveness that's a little different. So appreciate Wes sharing his voice and his work, and we'll hand it off to Wes from Oddside Ales. Cheers.
Cheers to Wes and Oddside.
Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State Podcast, Wes. Glad to have you here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So as per usual, I love to get started just hearing about how your journey into beer, the world of breweries and the world of Michigan beer began.
Yeah. Are we talking like personally?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Probably started a lot like many other people, just not loving all craft beers, especially hating IPAs right off the bat. But I had a lot of older friends in college. I was running a bar up at Ferris State, and had some friends that were, you know, 10, 15 years older than me, and in there kind of just regulars drinking. And, you know, after a couple of beer festivals, they come home and they're like, oh man, we've had this and this and this. And I'm like, I mean, like, are you going to bring me some? How are we going to get this started? So every so often they'd go to, it's Grunt's Brothers up in Big Rapids, really good store up there for Oddside as well. Not too much around for craft beer, but so we'd go there, get a bunch of singles, and they'd say, okay, we're going to, you know, let's go back and do a beer share. And that's kind of how it all started for me, is just, you know, friends showing me some beers that I might like, you know, start off easy, the easy stuff, browns and ambers, and then maybe some fruity stuff or some adjunct added, you know, chocolate or peanut butter, things that everyday people are going to consume as far as like flavor profiles. But from then it was just like kind of hit the streets running. I'd been in the bar industry ever since then, helped open a craft beer store in Farmington Hills. and then jumped to Oddside from that store. So since, I mean, I've been like 20 years old, I've been a buyer of some form in a bunch of different bars, restaurants, the store, and obviously now the head of sales for Oddside. But it was a fun journey for a person that had a pretty terrible palate at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody goes through some sort of transformation at some point. And it all kind of depends on what your surroundings are, I think, and some of your preferences are. So how long have you been at Outside then?
I've been there for 6 years.
Great. So tell me a little bit about maybe how your perspective has changed. So what was it like going from beer fan to being a member of the industry and having a different vantage point and different responsibilities?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I would say the biggest thing is that I'd say it's a pretty tough transition to go from beer nerd to like your job being the nerd thing that you love. Because the nerd aspect kind of like goes out the window. You're like not nerding out as much, you're not doing a bunch of beer shares when literally you drink 5-6 days a week for your job anyway. That was a transition period where it was just like a bunch of friends of mine that would come over for shares, and they're like, "Hey, let's do a share." I'm like, "Oh man, like I'm just burnt out." You know what I mean? But like in a good way, just working hard at it. But yeah, it's always going to be like in my soul to nerd out. Beer festivals, I'm always going for the super unique stuff I've never had before. That's the fun time to do that. But ultimately, it helped my transition as far as like the passion for my job, the passion for Oddside, the passion for the industry. This industry is so similar to the bar restaurant industry where everybody's tight knit, whether it's a coworker or just another bar restaurant or another brewery, however you may foresee it. But we're all kind of going through that same thing, and we all kind of talk about beer the same way. And I don't know. It's a super close knit community, from consumer to brewer to sales rep to owner. I mean, everybody really. I mean, if you put yourself out there, everybody kind of knows everybody. Like in one sense, it's always that degrees of separation that kind of come into play, but there really isn't that many anywhere you go in the industry, which is super awesome. It just keeps it very like, I don't know, very homey, I guess is how I would say it.
Yeah. And it sounds to me like your experience, one of the things we ask people about is sort of where their first sense of beer community came from and maybe their first instance. And when you were telling your story about friends turning you on to different, types of beer, it started from not even you going to a beer festival, but friends coming home from beer festivals. So did you have that sense of a Michigan beer and brewing community prior to your love of beer?
Yeah, I mean, I always, at least at most of the places that I went, even when I wasn't familiar with what the craft beer was, I always tried to have a couple handles that were only Michigan. And, that was a big push 10 years ago, especially, was that pure Michigan, that Michigan only, support local. And I was all on board with that. I mean, one of my favorite breweries kind of diving in was Shorts. And it's weird coming from Oddside. I mean, I guess because, I guess we're competitors or whatever, but they, made a lot of unique beer and a lot of beers that maybe the average Joe might give a shot. I mean, they made a lot of higher end and much more specialty stuff too as well. But that's just like one that I like to throw out there. And just, I mean, they were all about Michigan only up until, I don't know, a couple of years ago or a few years ago, which is totally cool. I mean, expansions are kind of necessary at this point in the game, but yeah, I mean, I was definitely felt a part of the community, especially after some beer festivals. And I say Shorts because, I mean, Joe Short always put himself out there. He would, host these little conferences and stuff. And like, even as the bar restaurant buyers and employees could attend, and he was just trying to enrich the culture and try and get more people, not even drinking shorts. Honestly, it was just like he wanted just to expose the community for what it is, which is like this great big bear hugging everybody that wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's great. And so when you thought about making that change from retail to going to a brewery, um, versus a traditional retailer, was that um, inspired by Oddside, or was it inspired by a look for, hey, I would like to be at a brewery, and then you find Oddside? Like how did that go, and what did that both decision and transition look like?
Sure. Well, I'm going to start over a little bit. So I left college, went down to Grand Rapids. I was like, oh, I've been in family businesses for my whole life. I'm going to try the corporate world. And I went to B-Dubs, and, not a great craft store, I would say, at the time. I mean, they had a ton of handles, and it was fun to kind of flip that into what it is. It was the one in Wyoming, Michigan here. So they had 64 handles. We ended up making 24 of them, Michigan only. So that was like a huge, like, holy crap, I got corporate to be this cool, like kind of craft centric. And then I think we were like one of the best draft beer locations in the entire state, in the Midwest. But either way, that was kind of just part of the journey. So I went to the store, really like hand sold everything, passionately. It was there all the time. I mean, I didn't really have any employees. So it was just kind of hand selling and getting people, like, extending my passion, extending my palate, and ended up being like a top 10 Oddside account in the state. And it obviously like turned heads. My previous boss, the owner's brother-in-law, popped in there for a little visit. And he's like, hey man, like I would love to just take you out for a beer and chat. I got an event, I think he said in like, next week or next month, and just come on out. It's right around the corner, and we'll meet there and just kind of talk. And his name's Andrew Donaldson. And we met up and kind of chatted, and I had no idea what he was going for. I just thought like, hey, I'm a buyer. He's going to take me out for a couple beers. It sounds fun. And so, yeah, that's really all it was all night. And then kind of at the end, he kind of hinted at like, well, kind of looking for someone to ease my territory size here. And you're on the east side already. So this was in Farmington Hills where the store was. And, he was based out of Grand Haven. So that's a haul. I mean, to cover Metro Detroit all the time. So he kind of planted the seed and let it at that. I don't know if I would ever say it was like my dream job or I was looking for it, but it kind of stumbled upon me. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I guess? I get to travel around. I get to work for a brewery that I love and respect. And, I was all about new adventures. And the store is, you got to stand still in the same place. That's just not me. I like moving and grooving and talking to people. So it definitely, like, I kind of went out on a limb. I even took like a pretty big pay cut to start it off, because this industry is not built upon high payroll. If you know anything about it, which I'm sure you do. But yeah, it ended up working out. Get out there, grind it, show them you can do it, and kind of work your way up the ladder.
Great. And now you said your role is head of sales, which is great. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
I think it's a lot of responsibility, I'm sure. So
It is.
But I guess a good question here. We have a lot of brewery and brewer folks on here, and I'm drawn to ask the question of there are a lot of people in the sales role in our industry. There's a lot of team members, and I'm sure many of them are listeners. And I think, but what I'm drawn to ask is a little bit about what do you think more consumers, or what do you think what do you think people should know more about your side of the business, the role that you're in, the overall sales teams out there? What's the life of somebody in Michigan craft beer sales like, and what do you wish more people knew about it?
That is a great question. I have no idea. Let me think about that. Job's a grind, for sure. People need to understand that, because everyone's like, your job's so cool. And like, yes, my job is super cool. And so is like, my job's a little bit different than a lot of the street reps now. I do a little bit of everything. My job currently is like 80% paperwork, sitting behind a computer. It's totally changed from where I started as a street rep, just knocking on doors, finding new buyers, new placements, and kind of going one account to the next each day. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that, yes, it's awesome, but there's a lot of hard work. It's just like any other sales job. You have quota and goals to meet. And it's just, you do get that rewarding aspect of, hey, the end of the day is probably an event or something, maybe not this past year and a half, but previously, probably an event where you're holding a beer and talking to people, and really isn't that hard to finish your day off as. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's like kind of the basic part of it. I mean, other than that, a lot of it is, I mean, any smart brewery is going to take feedback from your street reps per customers, the people actually drinking the product, the accounts. So there's a lot of back and forth between ownership and the brewers and the street team, the sales team. But we have such a great culture in Michigan. I feel like the job itself out there in the market is pretty straightforward. I mean, you've got a product, you're selling that product, and I think the biggest thing for a street rep that they have to have is passion. If you don't have passion about your product, then you might as well not even be trying, because you're going to get buried by someone like me or 100 other street reps that are as passionate, about me, just saying, hey, well, I love my product, and I know you're going to love this product. And if you don't love this product, we're going to figure out a product that you do love in my portfolio. So,
Yeah. And I think passion helps you explore for and find the beautiful characteristics of your brewery or the beer or whatever. Like the passion really brings you to figure out what needs to be revealed to somebody, what the world should know about that beer. Like you're an advocate for it, like it, like it's a fellow human being in a way. And I think without the passion, it's widget sales, which is not as engaging and harder to get other people excited about. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my favorite part about, and this is probably not many street reps, sales reps' favorite parts of the job, but my favorite part is consumers, like the interaction with consumer, the person buying my product or about to buy my product, not necessarily the buyers. I mean, they're fun and everything, but the consumer is like my bottom line, because they tell me everything I need to know about anything, even if they don't have any experience in the industry or have a good palate, but it tells me everything. I mean, if it's a lesser palate, then I can find something that they like and a reason why they like it. Or sometimes they give me great adjectives too, that I use to sell further in my job.
There you go. Unvarnished opinions.
Yes, I love them.
So how about the Oddside story? Tell us a little bit about how Oddside Ales came to be, and what's your signature?
Yeah, absolutely. So Oddside Ales was born in 2010. St. Patty's Day was when they opened the tap room. They've got a handful of beers at the time, but obviously some have come to the forefront and stuck around for a while. The owners are both MSU graduates, Spartans. So Chris graduated in accounting and kind of took that and ran with it and opened the business and brought his best friend Kyle in. And Kyle was kind of a man of many hats. He did brewing and just random other stuff at the brewery, and now he's kind of transitioned into our lab technician and quality control, which is awesome. Our lab is, I mean, really nice to have, considering where we're at in the industry. But yeah, I mean, since then we've had 4 or 5 expansions at not only the tap room, but also the production facility. So I know a lot of people just beat this with like a dead horse, but organic growth has always been Oddside's bottom line. It's little growth, but continuing to grow every year, never falling flat, never decreasing. And for the most part, they've succeeded in doing that. And I've only been around for 6 years. So, I mean, they're going on 12 in March. So it's a pretty great feat. They got in at the right time. The industry, I mean, we've obviously seen a boom since those 11 years or so. So their biggest thing was kind of not following the trends. I mean, it was kind of trying to be a trendsetter or trying different styles, different kinds of brews that maybe weren't the traditional ones or weren't being done by everyone. Very odd ingredients or odd hybrid styles. There wasn't a ton of people doing fruited IPAs 12 years ago. I'm trying to think of what other like OG ones. I mean, Mayan Mocha Stout has been around a long time. Not too many like spicy stouts around, but it's every year. It's every year raising that bar. I mean, we got into the seltzer game, and we're kind of all over the board with how we're attacking our portfolio. I mean, we're both drinking, a Marzen right now, so we've kind of come full circle back to like, well, maybe because we make traditionals really good, we should just like put some out there, even though we're Oddside. So we like try and keep the branding, kind of odd, even if the beer isn't necessarily odd. So it's nice to be able to like I said, come full circle and come back to really, I mean, the core of craft beer is traditional styles. So we've always understood that. I mean, obviously Bean Flicker is another one that's kind of that off the wall that really hit a home run. A coffee blonde ale, probably, I mean, to my knowledge, it was one of the first, at least in Michigan, that actually like succeeded. I can't really think of any that were before then, but yeah, that's just Oddside. I mean, we've made over like 400 beers. We've just kind of got back to an R&D program to really like amp up experimental brewing. And although the seltzers took off and kind of in the world of their own, we're trying to really exponentially grow our beer program as well.
Great. And what sort of region do you cover? You're doing a little distribution or a lot of distribution, and so what's that look like in terms of reach and geography?
Sure. So we were Michigan only for a while. I want to say 2015 might have been the first year we launched Illinois. And we don't have reps outside of Michigan. So this is very, we distribute a little bit in all these other states, but for the most part, it's kind of just little partnerships, and then the distributor kind of takes care of the rest. And we might do some market visits here and there. But yeah, after Illinois, in no particular order, we are in Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Texas. I'm missing one in the Midwest. I said Illinois. And then we're about to launch Tennessee. We just signed with Arizona. We just signed with Florida. So those southern states, we're trying to spread our wings down south and west. We're in talks with California, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia.
Wow.
So, I mean, it seems like a lot. We're in currently 9 states. Tennessee will be 10, Arizona will be 11, Florida 12, in that order on the tail end there. And then, the rest are kind of like filling in that gap. Obviously, the Midwest, where most of our states are, we all are going to get pounded with snow in a month, or maybe tomorrow. I don't know, or 2 months. But
Minnesota got some last night.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's coming. And that season, as soon as the holidays hit, it falls off a cliff around here. You got dry January for the crazy people, or maybe the respectable people. I don't know who's who. Maybe I'm the crazy one for not doing it. And then February is like the deadest month ever in the Midwest for beer sales. So that's actually like when Arizona, Florida, California, Tennessee, they all start to hit their stride maybe not Tennessee, but the others all kind of hit their stride. Those are their heavy sales months. So I'm just trying to fill in gaps, try and keep our volume level the whole year. And if I can pick up enough states, West and South, I think that it'll really create some stability year round. And the more stability I can create, the more fun, expensive machineries I can buy for the brewery, and we can buy together to increase efficiency and make everything less expensive for everybody, which is, I mean, as a salesperson's dream right there.
Yeah. So I imagine, there's a little bit of a flip that happens. I was just thinking about your role, your experience as a buyer, being kind of your industry and introduction. And I was just thinking about the shift that happens in terms of, in a buyer, you've got a reasonable amount of control of your four walls and the floor and sort of your store environment. And then, the suppliers are coming to you, and I might be answering more of the question than I mean to here, but it's like, I'm just thinking about, you see the supplier, you see the brewery rep, you see him for a short period of time in your total week, and you're going to figure out the relationship and the decisions and what you're carrying from that. And now that whether it was from your street rep days or your current role, I just wonder how it's changed for you to now be kind of out in the wild, bringing your beer to lots of little four wall environments where you have 15, 20 minutes with a buyer. And the further afield you go, I just wonder how that's changed your approach or attitude in terms of being the caretaker for a beer out in the wild versus a caretaker for the space that the beer comes into.
Sure. Yeah. Great question. And yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head as far as, I mean, they're essentially completely opposite roles in the same industry. The buyer is, like you said, in complete control. They have their own plan that maybe not every supplier is going to be privy to. I mean, I might be sitting with somebody, not necessarily fibbing to them, but I might be saying, kind of beating around the bush. We'll see what next month's got to hold. And maybe there is some room to fit them in, but ultimately you kind of know your plan. You can't really just wing it when you're buying. You've only got so much space or so much in the budget. I mean, there was only one place I ever had with an unlimited budget. And that was B-dubs, and that's just a different beast. But yeah, it's definitely, it took a minute and by a minute, I mean, honestly, it probably took a whole year at least to get fully situated into a street rep. I mean, you can't really wing it. I guess that's the only similarity, is that there has to be a plan. There's an ultimate plan, a higher plan from the brewery that you're supposed to be executing, but on your own level, you're really looking at, your day-to-day, week-to-week, how am I going to hit these goals, and really planning out the individual meetings down to, he likes this, she likes that. What do I have that I can sell them that fits into that little window? And, it's just, it's a different beast, and you got to know people a lot more. The buyer is a lot more people kind of bending over backwards for you, or you can ask favors. And supplier is kind of the other end of the spectrum, where you're doing the favors, you're bringing the swag, or the specialty beers that they're searching out, and you've kind of got to be the bearer of bad news a lot. Maybe you underproduced some crazy specialty beer, Hazel's Nuts or Rye Hipster, and someone's mad they didn't get some, or you have to, there's a lot more interpersonal connection on this side of it, the street rep side, it's really an acquired talent, I would say. It's not something that you necessarily have. You have to gain it through experience, really.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that it's just a different world too, because you're also, I have a couple of questions, and I'm trying to decide which direction to go, because one is about the farther afield. You're also talking about conditions and care, and thinking about age of the beer and how it's getting somewhere and how it's being handled, and sort of you're the eyes and ears for the brewery in terms of protecting that path to the consumer, which is even the buyer is a path to the consumer, that there could be consumers that want it in this place, and if the buyer doesn't say yes, they're not going to get it. So I'm not seeing them as an obstacle, but I am seeing them as a step in the process of, in order to connect to those consumers, you've got to navigate through this other decision and shipping process. So that's one area, but I think I want to go to this other area instead, which is, so as a long time member of the sales and marketing side of this industry, and one that had a lot of interaction on the production side, I often saw, and as a sort of a committee member for the conference, always active in the Michigan Brewers Guild conference, and a big fan of the craft brewers conference as well. I've often marveled at sort of the shift that happens in terms of, you've brought it up, and I'm a big advocate for the fact that we are this community that has rooting interest, and the Brewers Guild and the Rising Tide Project, all of these are examples of collaboration and rooting for one another. But I think brewers who are making the product, commiserating with other brewers at the bar and drinking each other's beer is one example of camaraderie that's remarkable. I've also sort of I feel like years ago I was what am I trying to get to? There's a difference when you look at salespeople who are out there competing for the same handles, competing for the same accounts, getting them to open up and be vulnerable with one another and not see each other as competitors is a different step, because they're literally competitors when they're lined up to see a buyer one after another. And yet I still see community and rooting interest and camaraderie within that community. I just think it's a bigger step than people who aren't engaged in the selling of the product, if that makes sense. There's production camaraderie and sales camaraderie. We need both. But I think you're in a unique position to talk about what are the what is either the camaraderie of our industry look like, or what are the ingredients for health? What makes that important or sustainable? That was a long, winding question, but hand it off to you.
Yeah, I mean, the camaraderie is great. I think like the super competitive is going to be like more at the macro level, where you're physically stealing each other's handles. Like, I'm never going to sharpshoot a handle unless I don't like someone or a brewery, or for a reason, like there's a reason why I'm taking it, or maybe they took a shot at us or something weird. That is a very rare instance that I would ever do. And it would be more to like prove a point. But I can't say I've ever done that, but more than maybe like twice in 6 years. And I mean, that's really kind of, like I said, a unique situation. But aside from that, like the macro level selling, like Bud Light, Miller Lite, like obviously they're making essentially the same product, same price. They're always fighting each other. We're not really at that level in craft beer. I mean, we are within our levels. Like Bell's, Founders, they're gonna kind of clash on the shelf as far as like, where they're aiming at price, styles produced, and chain level especially. But once you're kind of below that top tier, we're all pretty equal. All street reps are kind of doing the same thing. None of us are doing like some crazy other plan. It's just their own brewery's plan, but it's still the same formula of success. So I feel like, and that's kind of the same for the brewers. Brewers get their ideas by drinking other beers, being nerds and nerding out, and being able to like share that level of the same plan within our job titles really extends the camaraderie level. I can't tell you how many events I've done with multiple reps where it is just like zero. You would think that we're all best friends. And I mean, honestly, we are for the most part. Lots of inner circles within the selling community. And, we go to so many things that are involving so many people, festivals and such. We end up being like these household names, and then we're just average people, but everyone on the consumer level kind of, even shares that camaraderie. Oh, I was hanging out with Wes at Oddside and so at Shorts, and it was so cool to like talk to the both of them. I mean, it extends past the job. But yeah, I don't know if I quite answered your question.
Yeah.
I kind of went off on a sidebar there, but
No, it's good. It was a wide question, and I think you talked about the presence of the camaraderie, and that there is this sense of family out there on the sales side, even though you're all kind of playing in the same sandbox, and there's only so much real estate on the shelves and on the tap handles. So, and I get asked the question all the time about whether the market's saturated or how we can continue to grow within this environment. And I just wonder what your thoughts are in terms of how has it changed, and what does a successful, healthy growth look like on the shelves and the tap handles for craft beer?
sure. Yeah, it is. Saturated is a tough word to use, and a lot of people use it. I mean, I've used it before. There's a lot of breweries, and there's only so many people. I always envisioned this boom to be more of maybe the bottom third of the breweries are more just like your local town pubs, that service their locals and maybe don't hit distribution, because that's where it's really saturated. I don't mind. I think we're up to like almost 400 breweries in Michigan. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
380 or something? I haven't checked the numbers in a while, but yeah, I mean, there's not enough room on the space or the tap handles. Obviously, most bars are averaging around 16 handles, maybe, like on an average. I mean, even a lot of the big ones, 100 handles have regressed. Hopcats and such are back down to 40, 50, 60. And same with the store shelves. I mean, most stores aren't, they don't have an entire aisle. It's a section of craft beer. And maybe some have a couple small aisles, but the space is limited, and all beer sent out isn't necessarily selling either. So I think, to sustain the growth, there will be that turnover. There will be breweries closing. There will be that, people who reach too far too quickly. And that's how, we pride ourselves on that organic growth, because that's, stability. That's your feet underneath you, your legs underneath you. And some people just want to hit the ground running and get out there, and maybe their program quality isn't there, or maybe their pricing isn't there, or maybe their branding isn't there. And there's just so many factors into selling a beer, one beer out of 1,000 on a shelf to a consumer, that it's a tough world out there. And I'll tell you what, I know one of your questions later is about the pandemic, but the pandemic really, I don't want to say leveled the playing field, but it definitely expedited the issues or successes with everybody. Anybody that was successful increasingly did more successful things during that year. Anybody that was having issues probably, exponentially went right down in sales numbers. I mean, if you weren't established or you had debt issues, I mean, a brewery is so freaking expensive to run. They are literally a bank of money, and it's all just sitting on the floor until someone buys it from you. And most of it's in production equipment and salaries. I mean, cooperage, cans, and labels. I mean, it's insane. I had no idea how little money breweries were making at certain levels. I mean, you're really penny pinching. You're just like a retail store. So, I mean, that's a long answer to a long question, but it can be done. You need the right people in place. You need to listen to people on the streets as an owner. And you need to be flexible and resilient, and you need to be able to turn the page and move on from certain things. I mean, you can't beat a dead horse. Sometimes you want to force certain brands, and maybe they're just not for the consumer. Maybe they're not taking off. Maybe you don't have the right people pushing them, but everything's got to line up. It's not, it's definitely a huge, huge effort by your brewery staff, your distributor, your retailers. It's just, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to be successful. And I really hope that everybody can hang on, because it is sustainable. And like I said, if you've got the right plan, then I think that it can be done for sure with time.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like, if I were to just try to summarize that, it's like, and that does answer that first last call question well, or at least get it started. But it sounds to me like you're talking about stability and patience and organic growth, and also being willing to accept the environment out there, that not every one of your beers is going to be at the top of sales for a number of different reasons. And so finding a fit, finding a mix, and being realistic about what the market's going to do for your brand or with your brand is part of being stable and patient. And that, letting the market have a minute to respond to your product rather than expecting it does all just to sell because you brought it out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of equate it to like a QB, in football. You just kind of take what the defense is going to give you. You got to take what the market's going to give you. And you really, if you start forcing things, you'll start to run into issues. I mean, if you start spreading a brand out too thin, doing too many, variants, we've run into the same issues. I mean, but you just got to know when the time is up, when you got to pull the plug on something and turn the page. Like I said, that's probably one of the biggest issues, I would say, from a lot of breweries, is that they hang on to some things too long, or the other end of the spectrum is not giving something a chance. Yeah.
So that's a great time to jump into the last call questions that we've been asking everybody on the show. And you talked a little bit about the impact that COVID-19 and the related regulations and shutdowns created. So how's that affected your outlook looking onward and forward from here?
Sure. Well, I'd say first and foremost, it definitely wrecked our tap room. We've got, I don't know if you've been out there in recent year and a half or two, we expanded about 500 person capacity tap room now. And obviously that not being full all the time really hurt the bottom line. With that being said, we exponentially grew in off-premise sales. So, in stores and such, grocery stores and retail stores. So we definitely changed our philosophy, our plan to being more off-premise focused. And then obviously on-premise, those bars, restaurants have just kind of started to come back full force. And I mean, who knows what the fall winter has got to hold. I hope that they can remain open and just kind of everyone do their own thing to, take their own protections and such to keep everything open. But that was definitely, we used to do a lot more on-premise. We used to do a lot more draft sales, and we really had to refocus that to more cans, more bottles, more package.
Yeah, makes sense. And those are tough pivots because they don't happen in a second. And that's a whole process that'll have lasting impact, I'm sure. So the next one is the more you know. What beer style are you most connected to, and what do you wish more people knew about it?
All right. I'm a sucker for sours. And obviously sours are kind of polarizing because the word and the style name is literally something that describes what it is. Whereas an IPA, people are like, I don't know what that means. Anybody that doesn't know what it means, but a sour is a sour. But I'd say within the sour category, I mean, I love big, bold ones, but for the most part, I love gozas or lightly fruited, crushable sours or tart ales. One like the one that you're pouring right here.
Yeah. Feel free to tell us about this when you get a second.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I just think that sours kind of get a bad rap. You know, people think icky, ooh, sour vinegar, and you're like, yeah, but if it's done right, it's balanced. And I really love sours with fruit because I think it adds like a nice sweet and sour. It just kind of balances out that beer and really gives it a body and kind of, you know, it makes it more approachable, more drinkable at one after another. But yeah, we got the pineapple pink guava crushies there. That's our new Goza style. I would say it's kind of on the lighter side of the salty side of Goza. And then we added pineapple and pink guava. This is actually a beer we did in collaboration with Hopcat, just as like a draft only option. Actually, I've got the original over here. The regular crushies, I don't know if you can see it. So that's the no fruit in it. So we had already made the beer. We didn't really have a brand for it. My 4-year-old daughter actually named it on accident. I just like heard her say it, and I'm like, that's a great name for a beer. She was actually referring to croutons at the time. I don't know why, but I guess croutons are crushies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the long and short of it is Hopcat crushed it with crushies, did very well all summer, and we're like, we'd be stupid not to put this in a can. So we just released it maybe like a month and a half ago-ish, ago. Kind of late in the season, but it was a smaller run, so we just wanted to get it out there. But
nice,
yeah,
well done.
Yeah.
How about your ideal home bar? Whether you have it at home or whether you're making suggestions to somebody, you know, this was especially relevant at the beginning of the season and well, in 2020 when more people are drinking at home. I think that's still the case. So what advice do you have to kind of tips from the professionals in terms of serving and enjoying beer at home?
Yeah, you gotta have a large fridge, of course. Keep it fully stocked. I mean, personally, I'm like a terrible proper glassware guy. I will literally drink out of a sippy cup sometimes, or like my wife has a bunch of random glasses that are for like champagne and wine, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm pouring it in there. It's a cool shape. But yeah, I mean, you definitely got to have your snifter, if you will. I mean, that's pretty key if you like the big barrel aged stouts like I do. That's definitely one that, or a chalice of some kind. I like the bigger, like full hand glasses. Those are nice. If they're usually like a bourbon, probably like a bourbon or a Scotch glass, I'll pour my beers in there. That's okay.
There you go. So some sort of glassware is your tip for glassware, and straight out of the retail playbook, have a big cooler and have it full.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and probably have some barrel stave walls up there. A pool table might be helpful.
All right. How about love and hate? What current trends do you either love or you hate, and how are they reflected or not in the brewery?
Yeah. I hate smoothie, chunky, fruity, thick, almost like fruit juice beers. I don't get them. Well, first and foremost, I'm a texture person. So if I can like feel my beer moving in my mouth, it's more than just liquid. I am freaked out. That goes for like all texture things. So not just a beer, but yeah, I mean, I don't like the high sugar content. I don't like that we don't know what's in it. I mean, we do some things like fruitsicles that I guess you could consider are closer to that, but I think they're just more well done. You know, they're not chunky and thick like that. They have a body, but you're not leaving like residue on your glass as you're drinking it. That's just weird to me. Like if I want that, I'm gonna drink, you know, one of those, whatever they are, healthy, you know, fruit.
A real smoothie.
Things. Yeah, with like chai seeds and all that stuff. But
fair enough.
I'll throw New England IPAs in there too. I don't know if I don't like them anymore. Like I'm so over the trend, and it's not like there's some good ones. Obviously, like the OGs, like the Monkish and Trillium and all that stuff. Very good, well done. I can tell you if it's a good New England or not, but too too thick, and I cannot. I'm a multiple beer drinker a night. I want to drink, when I'm getting after it, I want to drink 6 to 10 of them, and I just can't. I can't with New England's. I'm almost over it. But
there you go.
Yeah, I'd say West Coast IPA. I mean, I love seltzers now that we make them, and they do have their place in the.
Now
in
that you
summer
make them, I
months.
like that. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
I mean, I really didn't like. I didn't like any of what was being made out there, and now ours is a little bit different, but it's pretty clean. And again, I can drink a crap ton of them, and in the hot summer, it not getting all messed up on IPAs, but and traditionals. I mean, I love a lot of traditionals: Kolsch's, Marzens, Gozas, lagers.
Nice. So how about your first drink? Do you remember that?
Like first alcoholic drink?
Yeah.
I think it was Mike's Hard Lemonade, honestly.
Ouch.
Yeah, I think I was like 18, Eastern Michigan University. My cousin brought me to some college party. He was older than me. And we drank like 3 of those, and I was hammered.
There you go.
Yeah, it's pretty bad first one, right?
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. It's usually not a remarkable story of quality when we're talking about our first drinks.
Yeah,
Not
it
if
might
we-
have been a bad blue light, I guess, maybe too. That
Not
was
if
like,
we got started early, anyways.
yeah.
How about
my
your
mom's-
worst drink?
Oh man, I'll throw M4 under the bus. Underberg.
All right, there you go.
It's not a beer, but
So do you have any sort of go-to hysterical stories from your time in Michigan beer that you find come up regularly that you'd like to share?
you sent this question list, and I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go with this one. But I'll share one. So we went out to GABF, Great American Beer Festival, as a squad. I think there was like 12 or 14 of us. And this is a few years ago. And it's a long drive. It was, with stops, we stopped at some breweries and got lunch and dinner and breakfast. And I think we made it in like 24 hours ish. Maybe it was 26. I mean, we stopped a handful of times. And went to the hotel, check in. It's like the next morning, and we have, things to go do. We got to go set up, blah, blah, blah. And the day goes on. We end up at dinner and maybe some drinks after, and it's like midnight, and I'm done. We've been up for like 40 hours. I'm kind of the old man of the group, I guess, considering the rest are like in their 20s. I mean, I can hang around, but I was just tired. I was beat. And I went to the Chiba Hut, which is, if you've ever seen a Chiba Hut, it looks like a blunt, but it's a sub, which, is done on purpose. We're in Colorado. So, it looked like a wrapped up, and it's a sub, but they have amazing subs. I never knew this. So got this giant, it was actually called the blunt. I think it was like 18 inches or something. Ate this whole thing, walked like 100 feet to our hotel. And I forgot I gave our taproom GM my key to the hotel. Well, then the next day, some pictures surface, and it was me sleeping on the hallway floor outside the door, with my wallet, phone, and keys all outside of my pockets because they probably were bugging me or something. Just curled up into a little ball. So that seemingly comes up a lot in the beer rep circles. Like, oh, watch out, Wes will be sleeping on the hotel hallway floor.
Yeah, watch out.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, I got the most sleep as everyone, and I partied hard the next day. So it was
There you go. There you go. The recovery is good. So how about bucket list drinking companion? Somebody alive or dead who you haven't had a beer with yet, but you'd love to.
I was hoping you'd say alive or dead. I gotta say, like Chris Farley. He
All
was
right.
like kind of a childhood idol as far as like, maybe not be like him, but just someone you looked up to as far as like, he's so funny. And like, I would love to meet him, be around him. Of course, seemingly how he passed, it seems like he would have probably drank me under the table and done a lot of other drugs and stuff that I didn't need. So
yeah, you might have ended up outside the hotel room door on the floor again.
We might have been sleeping together on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. And thanks for sharing your story and your perspective and helping bring all the beautiful Oddside Ales out into the world. I appreciate you spending time with us today, and we'll see you around out there in the beer world.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the beers I sent, and hopefully I'll see you at Detroit Beer Fest.
Absolutely.
All right. Cool, man. Come find me.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.